Craig Berube is gone. The head coaching position in Toronto is vacant. The most important offseason in franchise history just got more complicated, more urgent, and more revealing about exactly what John Chayka believes this organization needs to become. And into that swirling uncertainty, a very specific and very credible piece of news has landed. Darren Dreger on TSN Overdrive. The Toronto Maple Leafs are interested in Vincent Trocheck. This is not a rumor. This is not social media speculation. This is one of the most connected insiders in the sport confirming that the new front office has already identified a target and is actively pursuing him. Chayka has been on the job for weeks. He has already fired the head coach. He is preparing for the most important draft in franchise history. And he is simultaneously working the phones on a veteran two-way center with 13 seasons of professional credibility and a contract that fits cleanly against Toronto's available cap space. This is what aggressive organizational reconstruction looks like in real time. Vincent Trocheck, Toronto Maple Leafs trade interest. Darren Dreger, TSN confirmed. Let's start with the Berube firing, because it is the context that makes everything else in this story more significant. Craig Berube is out. The coach who inherited a broken situation, who tried to impose structure and compete-level accountability on a roster that was already fracturing from multiple directions, did not survive the front office transition. Chayka looked at the coaching situation and made the decision that a clean break was necessary, not just at the GM level, at the bench level as well. That decision tells you something important about how Chayka views the reconstruction. He is not preserving pieces from the previous regime and building around them. He is evaluating everything with fresh eyes and making changes where the organizational vision demands them regardless of the discomfort involved. Firing a coach within weeks of taking over a general manager role is a significant organizational statement. It says the previous culture, the previous structure, the previous approach to running this team is not being iterated upon. It is being replaced. The next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs will be Chayka's coach, someone whose system and philosophy and competitive identity align with what the new front office is trying to build. That alignment matters enormously when evaluating any roster acquisition, because the player you bring in has to fit not just the current roster, but the system the incoming coach will implement. Craig Berube fired Toronto Maple Leafs coaching search John Chayka 2026, which brings us directly to why Trocheck makes sense in this specific organizational moment. Trocheck is 32 years old, 13 NHL seasons, 868 regular season games, 239 goals and 631 points across stints with the Florida Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, and New York Rangers. He is not a player who needs to be taught how to play winning hockey. He is a player who has played winning hockey for a long time and brings that institutional knowledge into every locker room he enters. His 16 goals and 53 points in 67 games this past season represent genuine second-line center production. The face-off reliability is a specific and measurable contribution that analytics departments value highly, because winning draws consistently translates into possession advantages that compound across an entire season. His two-way structure gives whatever head coach Chayka eventually hires a player who can be trusted in defensive zone situations, on the penalty kill, and in the critical final minutes of close games where every shift carries outsized consequence. For a Toronto team that have been criticized repeatedly for lacking the kind of professional, team-first veteran presence that winning cultures require, Trocheck's profile addresses that criticism directly and immediately. Vincent Trocheck, two-way center face-offs veteran leadership locker room. The contract situation deserves careful examination because it is both the source of this opportunity and a potential complication depending on how the negotiation unfolds. 3 years remaining at $5.625 million per season. Total commitment of approximately $16.9 million. For the Rangers, who finished last in the Eastern Conference this past season, one spot worse than the Maple Leafs, that contract represents an obstacle to the roster reconstruction they need to execute, opening up Trocheck's minutes for younger players, clearing his cap hit to create financial flexibility, and potentially recouping draft assets in the process makes organizational sense for a New York team that needs to fundamentally change its competitive direction. Toronto has approximately $20 million in cap space available. Absorbing $5.6 million of that on Trocheck's deal is entirely manageable without the kind of roster contortion that compromises the ability to address other needs simultaneously. The Leafs can bring in Trocheck and still have meaningful cap space remaining to pursue additional targets through free agency and the trade market. The trade compensation is where the negotiation gets complicated. The Rangers will want draft picks, prospects, and potentially salary relief structured in a way that accelerates their own rebuild. Toronto's first-round pick situation is constrained. The first overall selection is almost certainly going McKenna and is not available. The 2027 first has already been moved. The 2028 first is gone as well. The Colorado pick coming back from a Nicholas Roy trade provides some future first-round ammunition, but carries lottery protection that complicates its value as a trade chip. New York Rangers trade compensation draft picks. Spec package rebuild. That pick scarcity means Chaykin needs to be creative in structuring the return for New York. A package built around mid-round picks, a prospect from the organizational pipeline, and potentially a player the Rangers have specific interest in represents the most realistic path to getting this deal done without surrendering assets Toronto cannot afford to part with. Nick Robertson has been mentioned in trade conversations throughout this offseason. His connection to Jason Robertson in Dallas generated its own storyline, but the Rangers see a goal-scoring winger with legitimate offensive upside as a useful piece of their rebuild. Robertson's name could resurface in the Toronto-New York conversation. The organizational fit for Robertson in a new environment has been a consistent theme across multiple trade discussions this summer, and the Rangers might value his upside more than his current place in Toronto's depth chart suggests. Matias Maxelli as a restricted free agent adds another name with playmaking ability that rebuilding teams covet. The combination of a prospect, a mid-round pick, and a conditional element tied to future performance might be sufficient to satisfy New York's requirements without forcing Toronto to surrender the kind of first-round capital they simply do not have available. Nick Robertson, Matias Maxelli, Toronto Maple Leafs, trade chips, Rangers' interests. The coaching search adds a fascinating dimension to the Trocheck evaluation that cannot be separated from the roster conversation. Whoever Chayka hires as the next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs will have specific system preferences, specific player profiles they prioritize, and a specific vision for how this team should play hockey. Trocheck's two-way game and veteran leadership make him compatible with virtually any modern NHL system. He is not a player whose value is system-dependent in the way that some offensively specialized forwards require specific deployment to produce. But the incoming coach should have input on this acquisition if the timeline allows for it. Chayka's analytical background suggests he will be deeply involved in the coaching search and will prioritize candidates whose philosophical approach aligns with the roster he is building. If Trocheck is part of that roster, the new coach arrives with a veteran center who understands professional expectations, who sets the standard in practice and in the locker room, and who can be trusted in every situation regardless of score or game state. That kind of professional anchor has enormous value for a coach inheriting a team in transition and trying to establish a new competitive identity quickly. Toronto Maple Leafs coaching search head coach 2026 Chayka hire. Now, let's come back to the question that Trocheck himself has made central to his market. He wants to win a Stanley Cup. He has said it explicitly and without apology. Does Toronto qualify? The honest answer in this specific moment is that the Maple Leafs are building toward qualifying rather than currently qualifying. The McKenna pick establishes the organizational future. The roster moves this summer are designed to make the present competitive enough that Matthews stays committed. The coaching hire will establish the system and culture that translates talent into results. But Trocheck's 3-year contract extends beyond the immediate window. By year 2 and year 3 of his deal, if everything Chayka is constructing comes together, Toronto's competitive trajectory should look meaningfully different than it does today. McKenna will be closer to NHL readiness. The blue line reconstruction will have had time to develop cohesion. The forward depth being assembled through free agency and trades will have had a full season to establish chemistry. Trocheck at 32 signing a 3-year deal is betting on that trajectory being real. And Chayka's job between now and whenever this deal gets done is to make that bet feel credible rather than optimistic. So here is your question for the comments tonight. Does Vincent Trocheck become the veteran two-way center that stabilizes Toronto's second line? and helps bridge the gap to the McKenna era? And what is the right price to pay given Toronto's limited first-round pick availability? Drop your answer below, because this acquisition shapes the roster identity of the 2026 to 27 Maple Leafs more than almost any other move on the board. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. Shake is moving fast, and we are covering every single step. Leafs Nation, let's keep building.